Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we've made it past the midway point of this 2036 season. Did our mid-season review last episode. Our Rockies playing very well this year, 54-29 record, up 14 games on the Diamondbacks already in the National League West. Continue to get some good feedback from the worldwide scouting department on what we should consider doing in the trade market. Since the last episode, heard again from Undercover Boomer, Ravenspawn 3, Wymie 943, and Avery Shayam. With a multitude of various suggestions, most of them around trading away some of the logjam of outfielders we have to find some pitching help, upgrading the back end of the rotation, perhaps trading away some of our veteran pitchers like Andrew Painter, and or looking to upgrade at catcher from Nate Harris, given that our starting catcher Mike Girard is on the IL. Can't really find any deals right now that I view as particularly compelling. Now we've still got almost 4 weeks until the All-Star break. I tend to think, though, with the fact that right now we're the best team in baseball and pretty happy with how things have gone this year, even though certainly not everything has gone perfectly, that barring a significant injury, I'm probably more likely to make the trades that address some of those issues come this upcoming off season, specifically maybe around the winter meetings when we hopefully can get the best value possible for some of the players on our team. Doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to look for things over the next several weeks. And again, if there's a big injury, that might make me accelerate things a little bit. But really the focus of what will be a relatively brief episode here is going to be just simming through the next week of game action and then getting to the first-year player draft, which is just a week from today on July 11th, and taking a look at who's available for us and hopefully opening things up for the worldwide scouting department to help us make that big decision with hopefully a player and multiple players who will be helping us in the future. Before we return back to our fictional baseball universe here in 2036, though, we'll talk about the American League Division Series, and obviously it has gone brutally for my New York Yankees so far. Their bats non-existent until they're behind 12-0, and the pitching has been very problematic against the Blue Jays. The old adage, and perhaps it's just wishful thinking, is that a series hasn't started until the home team has lost a game. That hasn't happened for the Yankees yet, but heading into Game 3 in the Bronx tomorrow night on Tuesday evening, they've got to be perfect over these next 3 games to have any chance of getting back to the American League Championship Series. So a pretty disappointing performance from the Yankees, particularly on the pitching side so far, with Heel and Fried as the starters, compared to how well the team pitched in the 3-game series against the Red Sox, but that is baseball. And taking a look at our team schedule over the next week until we get to the draft, we're home against Cincinnati for a 3-game series starting today, off day on Monday, then 2 on the road against Houston, and then 1 on the road against San Francisco is the first game of a 4-game road trip to the Bay Area, but we'll only have played one of those games by the time we get to the big draft. And since it's going to be a relatively short episode, like I said, without a ton of content, figured it would be a good time to check in on our former cleanup hitter and a guy who was part of our first 3 World Championship teams in Gus Nieves. Left as a free agent to San Diego about a year and a half ago. Had what was for him a down year a year ago, hitting .249, 27 homers, and 74 ribbies. with a 114 WRC plus and a 0.9 WAR his first year in San Diego. And unfortunately for Nieves, between him getting older and playing in a more difficult park, it seems like the decline has unfortunately continued this year. The batting average has dropped to 222, 12 homers and 32 ribbies, just past the midway point of the season. OPS below 700 now, and his WRC plus is actually below average, and he's slightly below replacement level, given that he's often a DH, I'm assuming, and his range is below average in the outfield at this point. So I know that was a unpopular decision with many when we moved on from him a year and a half ago. Felt like the money was too high, although to be fair, when he was still on our team, we could have gotten him for less. And I know that some of you felt that I was rather unemotional and didn't give him his just rewards, given how well he had played for us since we did sign him as a free agent out of Cuba in his mid-20s. But I think if you're going to take a cold-hearted, logical look at the way the decision has worked out, and the fact that we've still got too many good outfielder, first base, DH teams to even fill our major league team. We've got guys who would be on the majors probably with any other team in baseball, in Mike Castro and Kevin Wayment, who have spent most or all of this past year in the minors. I'd still argue that it was probably the right move to move on from Pex Nieves when we did. And I mentioned at the top of the episode that I thought I'd only be making a trade to really change things if we ran into some significant injury issues. But I guess the one thing I didn't think about was us just completely hitting the wall in terms of our performance. And after winning against Cincinnati, we've lost 5 in a row heading into the draft. So as we take a look at the standings, Giants now in second place with 7 straight wins. They're back to 500. The gap has been cut to 10.5 games, and we are only percentage points ahead of the Mets for the best record in baseball at this point, having lost 5 in a row. So still have a 10.5 game lead, still the biggest lead in all of baseball. Kevin Roberts Jr. second in the league in homers. Anthony Pack Jr. second in the league in stolen bases. Adonis Valer continuing to lead the league in saves, and Leo Martinez tied for second in pitcher WAR. So still a lot of real good individual performances. Have just under 3 weeks until the trade deadline at this point. So I am offline, going to, after this episode, continue investigating options. I think all of the suggestions that have come my way as far as catchers and starting pitchers and getting rid of excess outfielders and getting rid of veterans who aren't that good anymore, like Painter, are all very legitimate options to consider. But given that we continue to play pretty well despite the last 5 games, still think that unless we have another week or two like these last 5 days or have some significant injuries, probably going to be waiting to the off season to make a real big trade, just because I like the way we're positioned right now, and we are trying to win a 4th straight title. So we'll turn our attention now to the first-year player draft. No compensatory picks for us this year, so we'll be waiting until the 30th and final normal first-round pick to be making our first selection. And then after 5 compensatory picks, won't be picking again until 34th in the second round. So odds are we're probably, if there's a player we like, we're probably not going to get a shot at him again 39 picks later, when we have to wait through all of the supplemental first-round picks in the entire second round. So if there's someone we're in love with who's on the board when we're making our pick at number 30, probably need to grab them and not get too creative or ambitious or cute with what we try to do as far as who we pick 30th overall. And we've simmed ahead to our 30th pick in the draft. We'll take a pretty broad look at some of the top players who are available, both among pitchers and position players. Among some of the pitchers, we'll start with them. Kyle Skinner, 21-year-old college junior out of UIC. I'm assuming that's University of Illinois, Chicago. Like the high adaptability and baseball IQ, decent stamina. Think even though he's almost 22, he can add a little bit of velocity. And ultimately, looks like if he develops that splitter as a three-pitch guy who could be a solid major league pitcher, looks like more of a 4 or 5 starter to me, only an average competition level, although he is cheap. I'm hoping there will be a more interesting opportunity for us than Skinner. Another college pitcher, the reliever Aaron Johnson, minimal stamina, those ground ball tendencies and the high work ethic look interesting for him. Great competition level at Arizona State. His fastball and changeup already major league quality. Certainly looks like he could be a pretty interesting left-handed reliever. Again, hit squad Johnson, though, might be a little ambitious to pick in the first round. The last of the college pitchers with 60 ceilings is Mark Almquist. If you remember that name, he was drafted just a year ago and went unsigned. The Mets picked him 37th overall with a supplemental pick in last year's draft. The Twins drafted him 37th overall a year ago. The left-hander out with an elbow strain for another day, almost 23 years old now. Love the personality, good stamina, good at holding on runners. Still looks like a guy who could develop a 3 to 4 pitch arsenal. Like him a little bit more than the other two college pitchers we talked about. And it doesn't seem like that elbow strain is going to be all that serious an issue, although who knows what his ratings look like for the long term as far as his injury proneness. Also a pretty good bargain for a first round selection with what he's looking for in terms of money. And we'll take a look at all of the players available with higher ceilings. Probably not going to be too aggressive with some of these relievers. Paul Staley, 21-year-old out of Kent State University. Incredible slider and fastball already. The stuff is off the charts, but the movement and the control for a guy who's almost 22 years old have a lot of work. Probably not the direction that I'm going to go here. Paul Staley, not Paul Stanley. Alan Rancourt, 21-year-old out of University of California, Riverside. Like the high adaptability and baseball IQ, can reach the high 90s. Minimal stamina, but a guy who looks like he could be a pretty interesting left-handed reliever in the not-too-distant future. Another reliever, Phil Gilbert, 18-year-old, committed to Oral Roberts. Looks like the control is going to be his potential issue. Fragile already. Do like that we think he can get to 100 miles an hour on the radar gun, but hopefully not going to be the guy we go after in the first round. And then another reliever, Aaron Bettenhausen out of the University of Indianapolis. Another guy who is ground ball tendencies we think can get to triple digits. He's actually a high schooler. He's committed to the University of Indianapolis. Think he looks like he could be a real good right-handed reliever. Don't know that he's someone that we're going to look to chase at with our first-round selection. And then there are 5 players with higher ceilings, including a couple of starters. We'll go through the relievers first. Jason Pickett has got a 80 ceiling, according to our scout. Mixed personality, like the high adaptability and baseball IQ, but don't like the high financial ambition and the low leadership, loyalty, and work ethic. So he's extreme at every level in terms of the 6 key personality traits in OOTP. Like the durability, not a lot of stamina though. Looks like he could have filthy stuff and really good movement on his pitches. The control is going to be Frankenstein Pickett's potential issue. Looks like certainly an interesting left-handed reliever prospect. Ryan Barry, college player out of Coastal Carolina. I think he is a reliever, could have filthy stuff, reach 100 miles on the radar gun. His fastball is already world class, and he's got the potential to pair that with an incredible curve. Movement and control, only average, but certainly looks like an interesting right-handed reliever. And then another reliever, Dan Grumbles Floor, 18-year-old lefty out of Staunton, Virginia. Another guy with a fastball, curveball combination, ground ball tendencies, can get to triple digits, like the high work ethic. Another guy who, like many young pitchers, needs to do a lot of improvement in his control, but think the stuff and the movement could both be outstanding. Two starting pitchers with pretty high ceilings, according to our scout. And not surprisingly, these are the guys who are looking for the most money of anyone that we have talked about as far as the pitchers. On the high school side, there's Mike Nimey. Like the high loyalty and adaptability. Don't love the low baseball IQ. Solid stamina. Not that good at holding on runners. Going to need that change to develop to become a 3-pitch starter. But his fastball and his splitter are not far off major league quality, which for a guy who's turning 19 tomorrow is pretty impressive. But a lot of work to do with his movement and his control. If we want someone who's closer to major league quality, then Evan Kluver certainly looks like the answer. 21-year-old out of the University of California, San Diego. Or the University of San Diego, not the University of California, San Diego. Good competition level there. Like the high baseball IQ, good stamina, decent at holding on runners. Think he can throw consistently in the mid-90s. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, although that splitter is definitely a supplemental pitch rather than something that's going to be a normal part of his repertoire. But think that his fastball can be above average, and the slider, change, and sinker all could be above average as well. Ultimately think the stuff is solid, should have pretty good movement on his pitches, still working on his control. But Packy Kluver, to me, is a pitcher who could maybe not become an ace. If he reaches his full potential, he'd be a very interesting pitcher. No guarantees that he does that, but looks like I'd say a pretty decent probability that somebody like Kluver could slot in as a 3rd or 4th starter in the not too distant future. And as I said, if you get lucky, probably a pretty solid number 2 behind Leo Martinez. And when we think about the pool of pitchers available, there were no relievers that I was so overwhelmed by their potential skill set that I'd be pushing them to the top of the list. So it's really 4 of the starting pitchers that we talked about that would be on my short list. Looking at where they go in the mock draft, not that that's going to be perfectly accurate. A year after being a first round pick, for some reason, despite a 10-4 record with a 2.83 ERA at Alabama, Mark Almquist projected to go with the 12th pick in the 4th round. So the experts think he's going to last a long time this year after he went unsigned with the Twins as a first-round pick a year ago. I'd be very surprised if he lasts until the 4th round, but he is, in theory, the guy who we could wait the longest on. The high school pitcher, Mike Nimey, expected to go with the 5th pick in the 3rd round. So in theory, we could wait on him until the end of the 2nd round. Although, again, if we really want him, and with the way that it seems like the mock draft underestimates where pitchers are going to go, tend to think there's a pretty good chance that he is off the board by the time we make our next pick. The other 2 pitchers we would almost certainly need to take right now to have any chance at. The college pitcher Kyle Skinner out of University of Illinois, Chicago, projected to go with the 15th pick in the 2nd round. So odds are he will be gone long before our next pick. And then the guy that I think I like the most of this crew, Evan Kluver out of the University of San Diego, is expected to go with the 9th pick in the second round. So if we want Packy, now is the time to grab him. I think if we are to go with a pitcher in the first round, I don't know, and I don't think it would be anyone except Evan Kluver. But there are still hundreds of position players for us to be thinking about, but would love to hear alternative opinions, and obviously have to factor in the position players who are available before we make any position decisions. But if I were to go for a pitcher right now, it would be Evan Kluver, who's looking for just a little more than we have in terms of slot at $3.6 million. But that's only $600,000 above what we have slotted for, and we do have a lot of extra money to spend right now. And turning to the position players, we'll kind of look at things the same way as we did with the pitchers. Some guys with pretty good ceilings but higher floors who are college players, and then some of the highest ceiling players available. Starting with a college outfielder, 21-year-old Steve Taylor, switch hitter out of the University of Southern Indiana. Don't love that it's only been a fair competition level, and don't love the low baseball IQ. But you can't argue with a lot of the other stuff in his profile. Pretty solid speed, good base running instincts. He's a good leader, really nice range in the outfield, and potentially outstanding gap power to go with contact, home run power, and eye that we all think could be in the average-ish range to slightly above if he meets his full potential. Honestly, I don't think he's quite as good a prospect as Mike Castro from a couple of years ago in the draft with our first-round pick, but Steve Taylor with a somewhat similar skill set. Another college player, the shortstop Tim Penta out of Arizona State. Like the durability. The glove is not great for an infielder. That 45 range and issue looks more like a corner outfielder or a third base type. Could also play first base. Potentially really good power and eye. The question is going to be the contact and the strikeouts, as it often is with some of these younger players, but certainly some things to like about the young infielder Tim Penta. Justin Madden, center fielder out of North Carolina State University. Great level of competition there. A lot of positive personality traits with high loyalty, adaptability, and work ethic. Pretty solid-looking defensive outfielder. In a perfect world, probably more of a corner outfielder than a center fielder. Solid speed, base running instincts are fine. Potentially above average contact and eye, average home run power, and really good gap power potentially for the left-handed hitting Madden. So overall, a pretty similar profile between Madden and Steve Taylor. A couple other more advanced college prospects who have decent ceilings. Another outfielder, Raul Gonzalez. Contact and gap power, both potentially close to off the charts. Really good speed. Not a lot of home run power. Not the greatest eye in the world for the lefty. Also not quite as good a defensive outfielder as some of those other guys. And then last but not least, center fielder Jeff Conaway out of Oregon State. Similar profile to the guy we just looked at. Really good contact. The power in the eye, not great. The gap power, not quite as good either. Pretty good bunting instincts and decent base running instincts. Pretty solid looking glove for the 22-year-old Conaway. I think my gut when I think about Conaway, Raul Gonzalez, Justin Madden, Tim Penta, and Steve Taylor is that to me Steve Taylor and Justin Madden are probably the two most interesting on an initial glance, but we do have about 10 guys with even higher ceilings, including a couple of college players that we're still going to talk about. And there are 7 players with slightly higher ceilings of 65, according to our scout. Second baseman Zach Wilkinson, 18-year-old out of West Freehold, New Jersey. Like the durability, not a particularly good-looking defensive prospect, and don't know exactly where he's going to play at 5'11". First base isn't even going to be a great position for him, although that's probably where he'll be best suited with those ratings. Really good contact hitter with a really good eye, but with a lack of gap power, the lack of home run power, and the pretty mag glove, he's not really, I think, going to end up at the top of my list. Another high school second baseman, Bobby Nicholson. Another guy who's not that impressive defensively at this point. Do like the high baseball IQ. Like the gap power and the home run power. I think he can have an above average eye. The contact is going to be a struggle for him. He's going to strike out an insane amount of times. Also a bit older as a guy who's already 19 years old. Center fielder Tony Lugo, college prospect out of University of Louisiana Lafayette. Like the outfield range, pretty decent speed. Going to make some errors on balls that he gets to. He's got an above average arm. Think that everything in his bat could be a bit above average. Really good gap power potentially. Not a horrible prospect. I think, Tony Lugo to me certainly fits in the same bucket with the likes of Justin Madden and Steve Taylor as somebody to at least consider. 4 additional players to talk about, all infielders before we get to, at least according to our scout, the real cream of the crop as far as their potential. One is a college player, shortstop Bobby Hanks, looking for $4.2 million, so one of the more expensive players in terms of his demand, still on the board. A junior out of Stanford, so he has been facing a great competition level. Do like the glove. He's got potential to play just about anywhere in the infield, so that's positive. Definitely some negative personality traits with Mr. Hanks. The low leadership and work ethic bother me the most. Like the high adaptability, not the greatest speed in the world, but he's not far off being a major league hitter, and there's potential for him to be a slightly above average major league hitter with a good glove. Definitely one of the more interesting players to consider. I can't say I'm in love with any of the infielders, but I definitely like Hanks better than the likes of Nicholson and Wilkinson, and even our young friend Tim Penta, for that matter. Couple other infield prospects to talk about, actually 3, and these guys are all high schoolers. John Gill, shortstop out of Green Ridge, Missouri. Fragile already, not the greatest looking glove in the world. Does have a nice potential contact and gap power combination. I think the home run power in the eye will be below average. Has above average speed, line drive hitter with spray tendencies. Could play reasonably well in cores, but it's certainly not blistering speed, and his base running instincts are not great. Not the worst prospect in the world. Probably like Gill a little better than I like Nickerson and Wilkinson, but I'd be surprised if he's who I end up taking. Shortstop Alex Gamez, pretty good range, a decent error rating, not really a natural second baseman with that below average turn double play rating, but still a guy who could certainly play a multitude of positions in the infield, could also play the corner outfield. Gamez, a product out of New York, the town's so nice they named it twice. solid speed, pretty good contact hitter with outstanding gap power, and at least in terms of his potential, a little more home run power and potential to draw walks than some of the other guys that we've looked at. Is a older prospect at almost 19 years old. The final guy with 65 potential, another infielder, third baseman Tom Decker, 6'2", probably more of a natural first baseman than anything else with those ratings. Could be a pretty solid defensive first baseman. Could also play third. Could play him in left field if you needed to, but you wouldn't feel good about it, especially in a place like Coors. The contact looks like it could be ultimately in the average-ish kind of range, but think the gap power, the home run power, and the eye could all be above average for the Piper City, Illinois prospect. And the final three position players we'll talk about are, at least according to our scout, the three position players with the highest potential. Center fielder Jeff Vaum, like the durability, doesn't really have a center fielder's profile. He's got a pretty weak right or left fielder's profile. He could also play first base, but you're not going to love him there. So he's a guy who's really being drafted for his bat. I think the contact and the eye could both be borderline outstanding. Decent gap power. I think the home run power is below average. The speed, nothing exceptional. Certainly can't rule out a prospect with his potential, but I'm hoping there's someone else among these last couple of guys we talk about that's a little bit more interesting to me. Right fielder Hector Garza, really good contact hitter. Everything else kind of in the average-ish to meh range in terms of his batting ratings. Jake Garza, another guy who doesn't look like a particularly good defensive outfielder. 6'3", he could definitely play first base at a pretty decent level. Not a ton of speed. Another guy who's a decent prospect, but I can't say I'm in love with. The highest rated prospect, according to our scout, the third baseman, Chris Burnham. Another guy who looks like a third base or first base type with that 6'4" height. Not really a realistic player to put in the outfield. Little flying dagger. We think his contact could be slightly above average. The gap power, the home run power, and the eye all could be excellent, although with only 35 speed. The gap power is a little bit wasted. Definitely with that lack of speed is probably going to have some triples that turn into doubles and some doubles that turn into singles just because of his lack of speed, but still could definitely be one of the more interesting hitters available. Also has some positive personality traits with the high adaptability and work ethic. And there ended up being 11 position players that I had on my short list of guys that I wanted to look up their prospective mock draft positions and spend a little more time reviewing with you before we finish this episode. Not surprisingly, just about all of them we would need to pick right now based on where the mock draft has them and the fact that our next pick isn't for another 39 selections. The guys that we might have some time with include the third baseman Tom Decker. He could be an interesting choice down the line. Don't love the high financial ambition and the low baseball IQ, but still has a pretty interesting potential bat as a first base, third base type, and he's not projected to go until the 22nd pick of the fourth round, so could be an opportunity for him to wait a little bit. Looks like the OSA is much lower on him than our scout is, so that could be a guy that we take a couple of rounds from now potentially. Another guy who we may have some time to wait on is the shortstop John Gill. We are projected to take him with the 32nd pick in the third round. So the fragile infielder Another guy who really looks like more of a third base, first base type, could also play corner outfield. Pretty good contact and gap power, like the speed, but the power in the eye, nothing special, and he's got a lot of work to do just to get up to a respectable level in those two traits. Also, his fragile physically, but in theory, we could wait until the third round to take him. Alex Gomez, expected to go with the 26th pick in the second round. So in theory, that means we would have to take him now. Like the range, and the bat is not horrible looking, but tend to think there's probably some other guys that we would go with here in the first round. The other guy who we've got a little time to potentially wait on is Hector Garza, if I can remember where he was on the list. Oh, the right fielder, Hector Garza. Yeah, he's got a higher ceiling, according to our scout at least, but he's not projected to go until the 13th pick in the third round. So he's a guy who we could certainly wait on until the second round, at least according to the mock draft. Really like the contact with him, but nothing else about him is special. Tend to think he's not a guy that we would really reach for. And the 7 other guys that we're going to talk about as far as position players are all expected to be taken before the second round begins. So we'll go in reverse order to talk about them. The center fielder, Jeff Vium, expected to go with the 5th supplemental first round pick. Like the durability, pretty well-rounded bat except for the lack of home run power. Don't love the glove, don't know as much about his personality, but Vium, if we wanted him, now is the time to take him. The young infielder Tim Penta is expected to go with the 4th supplemental first round pick, so 1 pick before Vium. Penta certainly liked the home run power and the eye. Question his ability to make consistent contact, particularly given the fact that he's almost 22 years old. Love the competition level that he's faced in college, but he hit only 249 and 236 these last couple years at Arizona State. It's hard to imagine he's going to be able to improve that batting average much in the majors. The pick before Penta is supposed to be the center fielder Tony Lugo, so the 3rd supplemental first round pick is expected to be the outfielder Lugo out of Louisiana Lafayette. Pretty mature prospect, almost 22 years old, not too far off major league quality. Looking for a little bit less than slot. Certainly would think that he'll be off the board by the next time we pick. If we want a safer looking prospect who might be able to help us relatively sooner, Lugo could be the way to go. But he also would just be adding to the number of good young outfielders and outfield prospects we have in our organization. Another guy who is supposed to be a supplemental pick, if I can find him, is the center fielder Steve Taylor. The 21-year-old out of southern Indiana is expected to be the 1st supplemental pick, so he's supposed to come off the board with the next pick after ours. Another guy who could certainly add to the organizational depth we have in terms of outfielders. Like that he is a switch hitter. Right now looks like he may end up being a little better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching, but a pretty well-balanced profile. Good speed, good range. Don't love the low baseball IQ, but if he can hit the ball, that's a bigger priority than perhaps him being perfect in terms of his baseball instincts. And then there are 3 final players we're going to talk about who are expected to be off the board, or in the case of Chris Burnham, coming off the board right now, because Burnham, little flying dagger, the highest potential player available among position players, is the guy who was mocked to our Colorado Rockies with this 30th overall pick. Talked about him earlier. Really like the bat. The gap power is wasted a little bit, but still potentially very good home run power, an excellent eye, good contact. For a 17-year-old, he's reasonably well developed, has some positive personality traits, and if that bat comes close to fully developing at 6'4", certainly would feel pretty good about playing him at first base, and could also play him at third. So Burnham, an interesting prospect, and given that he's supposed to come off the board to us right now, pretty unlikely he's still going to be around another 39 picks from now. Two players left to talk about. Justin Madden, the very well-developed left-handed hitting outfielder, was expected to go with the 27th overall pick, so he's already expected to be off the board. The NC State product, pretty interesting looking hitting prospect, a lot of positive personality traits, solid glove, solid speed, left-handed hitter, although he looks like right now pretty similar profile against lefties than righties, maybe a little bit better eye against righties at this point, but not going to have dramatic splits. But given that we do lack a little bit of left-handed pop in our lineup right now, Madden certainly somebody to consider. And last but not least, the most highly regarded player, at least according to the mock draft, was the shortstop Bobby Hanks, the 21-year-old out of Stanford. He was projected to go with the 19th overall pick, so another guy that already expected to be off of the board, and certainly would not expect to be around when we are picking next. The bat's not far off major league quality. The glove is definitely major league quality. The question with him is just how big a negative impact in the clubhouse is the low leadership going to be? How negative is the low work ethic going to be in terms of his development? Because he does tend to slack while doing his drills. So definitely a lot of interesting directions to go with the position players. As I mentioned, most of these guys expected to be off the board by the next time we pick. So if we want a player, we've got to pick him now. I think there's several different directions I would think about going among the position players. So would love some thoughts from the worldwide scouting department there. If we do go with a pitcher, I think it's going to be pretty hard for the worldwide scouting department to convince me that Evan Kluver would not be the way to go. But open to hearing all of your thoughts, and looking forward to finding out what we decide to do. And before we do that, what the worldwide scouting department recommends that we do in this upcoming 2036 draft. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.